Hello everyone, it's Liv and welcome back to the Global Racing Podcast. Today I am joined by a special guest, Ed Spencer, who is a motorsport journalist. We're going to be talking about all things motorsport and also motorsport journalism, so I hope you guys enjoy. The first question I have for you is how you become interested in motorsport and specifically Formula One?
I think it was just a case of family members getting into it. So my grandparents were on the opposite sides of the spectrum per se. One was a diehard Nigel Mansell fan who followed him, didn't follow him as much, but always watched the race on TV. And I think went to see him at the Tucker shootout in Donington 93, and his car broke down the way back and Nigel crashed out. So it wasn't a happy pilgrimage for him. And my other one was on the side of Schumacher because of the press were very against Michael at the time. This was the era of Schumacher versus Hill. So, there was always that side. We were always a Formula One family per se, but we're not fanatics. And yeah, I just slowly fell in love with it. And that's how it started, really. It's just the love started and then it just grew and grew.
That's lovely. So what are the differences, would you say, between watching Formula One as a fan and then being involved as a journalist?
Journalists, it's non-stop. I think everyone thinks that Formula One, everything stops in F1 when the cars pack up and go to the next race. It's not like that. It's so busy. There's always something going on with technical side. There's always an interview where you want quotes. There's always driver market movement, like the summer, for example, silly season. I mean, Piastri Gate last year was a prime example of that. And I would say it's non-stop. When the race finishes and the podium finishes, you switch off your TV and you go and do your normal thing. Here, we're always up till like 6, 7 o'clock chasing audio from team principals, drivers, all sorts. But I think also the thing you don't get on TV as a fan is you don't get to see like the paddock. You don't get to meet and greet the people who are, the movers and shakers in the paddock. So there's a difference, I would say, but I think it's more intense when you have to work as a journalist because it is your life. You can't live a day without Formula One because you never know when that piece of news is going to break.
Yeah, of course. So did you always want to be a journalist, or was it something that you discovered a bit later on down the line?
I think I always wanted to be in the F1 paddock. I think there was always that ambition, since I was a kid, where I thought I have to make it, I have to be in the paddock. And, I did harbour ambitions to become a racing driver, but there was a problem. I disliked chocolate too much. And I was too tall, and I don't think I would have done that much. Now it's been confirmed on various simulators that I'm not actually that quick. So I think the real realization I could be a journalist was I think it was near the end of high school when I started liking English studies, so poetry, Shakespeare. I thought, well, you like this. Why don't you, try and get in through journalism through Formula One? And slowly but surely went down the career path. And yeah, it's just went from college to university and then to here. And yeah, all in the space of about 6 years, 7 years, which doesn't seem like long, but for me, it felt like forever. Especially with a pandemic thrown in there as well, for good measure.
Yeah. So what was your career journey?
My career journey was, I think, 2019, July time, I started writing for Check Flag and then did a few months there and then went to Inside F2 and we did 2 years covering Formula 2. This was the era of Drugovic, Piastri, Mick Schumacher when the first year I started. And we just basically, we had to fill a big bulk of the schedule with exclusive interviews with old drivers. And then 2021, the F2 calendar was going to be shortened it was going to be like 3 races per 8 rounds. So it left me thinking, well, what am I going to do for most of these races? So I went to Formula One with Motorsport, and then we did 1 year. Obviously, we couldn't go to the main race because of the pandemic. And then 2022 was my first race, which was Spain. So all in the space of over a year, I was in the paddock. And then 2022 as well, September. So Motorsport was on its way out, per se. September, I joined Total Motorsport and kind of gone on from there since.
That's lovely. So what does a typical race weekend look like for you?
Typically, it starts Wednesday when you get to the accommodation. For example, I will typically arrive Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday night to event my hotel or my accommodation on Thursday morning. If I'm not there, if I didn't go to the accreditation centre in the afternoon, I always go in the morning to get my pass. So you have to present streams of documents, like 9, 10, 11 pages, and then you also have to sign it. Beforehand, you present that, you pick up your pass, you get your sticker, you get set up, and then you look at what the schedule is. So if you have a session at 11 o'clock, you make sure you're there for that, and then you just slowly trickle down throughout the day. And typically you'll go out about 5 or 6, and then you will finish up. You'll do a bit of writing, but you can't really do as much on Thursday because your primary job is to get the audio for the guys and girls back at base. So you do that, and then Friday you're up early. I would say I get up about 6 o'clock in the morning, and then get to 7 or 8. I'm here at the track, so I start looking at what I've got to do. So if I've got an interview done, I will get working on a piece, get typing it, get the quotes ready, and then just do that throughout the day. It's a bit more easy on a Friday. Saturday is when the real action starts because it's qualifying day. So we have the media pen. So I will typically go and watch qualifying. I watch Q1 from the media center, and then I will go down Q2 to get the first of the drivers, Q1, and just slowly but surely I will get the drivers. And then Sunday, it's just same thing with the race. Obviously, red flags may cause the session to be delayed. So you obviously have to be keeping that in mind. And then, you go home Sunday night, you go back to the hotel Sunday night, you pack for an early departure Monday morning, Monday afternoon. Or if it's a home Grand Prix, you can literally, get a last train home, and then you get back for Monday morning. So that's how my weekend typically works. And of course, if there's an event thrown in Wednesday evening or Thursday evening, it's usually penciled in for then.
Very busy. So what's your favorite thing about being a motorsport journalist?
I would say probably, I think it's good to be up and close with the people you've admired and venerated on television for years. And I think it's also getting up close to these cars. What we have as journalists is we have a thing called the show and tell section. So we can go in the pit lane, look at the cars, take pictures, look at the new upgrades, get really close. So it is like an open air art gallery. And I love that bit. But I do love the events. I do love the odd exclusive there and then. I do enjoy a chunk of it. And it is hard work, but at the end of the day, it's hard work, and it can be quite rewarding. It just depends on the structure and if you can give yourself some time to breathe, which I think is always impertinent. The events are good. The evening events are good too. Like the occasional yacht venture or the occasional factory visit is very nice.
Of course. So what was your first interview experience? Were you really nervous, or did it come quite naturally?
I think you're always really nervous before you go to an event, for an interview. I think the first proper one I did for a site was, I'm trying to think now because this was back in the pandemic, was gender, I believe, and we had to get it was I did an interview with Neil Gianni, and you had to just on the phone you had to hold the recorder up. So that was when I was a little bit nervous, but gradually as time goes on, you get a bit more in the swing of things and you get a little bit less nervous. The only time I really felt quite nervous for interview was with, I would say, Danny Rick in Monte Carlo. So because Danny Rick's like a big cheese still in the F1 paddock, so yeah, nervous for that. But after a while, you feel like, okay, this is just a normal person. I think that's what the important thing about being a journalist is, just treat this person like a normal person per se. It's not someone who is a royal family member, or he's not a billionaire. He's just a normal person. If you remove the race overalls and you remove the helmets, that's how I always approach it. They're just normal.
Fair enough. So how do you prepare and approach an interview with a driver?
So typically I will start, it will take like a month to get the interview sorted with the exclusive, and then I will typically in the week of the interview, once the date and time is confirmed, I will start jotting down questions. So typically we only get around 10, 15 minutes for driver, which isn't much. So just have to jot which questions you think are going to be good for priority and which ones do you think are going to be good for a news angle. Because at the end of the day, if you're going to waste time talking waffle, it's not going to get any coverage and it's going to be a bit of a waste of time. So you have to look for an angle. What do you want to run with? For example, if you want Nick de Vries, you're going to ask him questions about his future. Lewis Hamilton, you're going to ask about what's happening with Mercedes. If you're going to ask Max, you're going to talk to Max, you're going to talk to him about, what is wrong with the sport in terms of the calendar size. So you really just have to prepare for what angle you need. And then always jot the questions down on like a notepad. So I typically write them down all on a note. It takes about a good 20 minutes. But at the end of the day, it's there. It's like a catch me. So I can look at the questions. If I don't know them, I can have a look and I can say, okay, this is next. And then typically I will do that. I will then put the audio on a transcription service called Otter. And then I will make sure it all reads properly because sometimes it's not particularly amazing in terms of it gets some words wrong. And then, prepare the interviews, prepare what angles you're going to get, make sure everything works, reads, normal. And then, that's how you prepare. And if you get a picture of them, the driver, even better.
So since you began working as a journalist in motorsport, I feel like F1 has grown a lot in popularity and the demand for driver content has also increased. So how would you say that media has changed, like the way it's been treated since this surge of interest in the sport?
I think there's always more competition. I think a lot more outlets are wanting to do Formula One, but at the same time, it's had a little bit of a problem with the fact that, the money isn't always there in journalism. So not every publication can send a journalist to a Grand Prix. So that's a bit of a problem we have at the moment, but there's always competition to get interviews. Everyone wants 100 interviews with Fernando, Max, Lewis, they're the big three. But it also trickles down to the other drivers now. You have to really just fight for them. And also, I would say it's increased everything in terms of not just like the media side, but also cost as well. Hotels are much more expensive, travel's much more expensive. But I suppose that's the part and parcel of growing the sport. You have to know that there will be increased competition for not just a driver interview, but for just getting there. So you have noticed it with the Netflix effect.
Yeah. So what skills have you learned over time to improve as a journalist?
I think be more sociable. So I am a diagnosed autistic and being sociable is a bit difficult. So when I got to the paddock, the first thing I learned was you have to really work with other journalists and be nice and polite with them to get the audio you need, because you're not always going to get the driver you want. If you're on the other side of a media pen, it's not easy. So you have to just really barter and work together with people. I would also say the lessons I learned, I think it's always just, just try and, have a plan ahead, what you want to do, what you think is priority, what isn't. Always have some questions down, ready to go for pressers. And if you don't have anything, just, make sure the audio is bang on. I would also just say, I think it's just really all down to organization skills, and also learning how to work together with people you don't really know, you've never met before, but they could be so important in your life. And also be very friendly with the teams. The teams at the end of the day, they're the ones who can grant you amazing opportunities to go to events or go and get a driver. So always be nice.
Yeah. So we all know that F1 and motorsport is a very difficult sector to break into. So how did you go about getting your foot in the door in this industry?
I think it's networking. Everyone says it's networking, and I couldn't agree more. So always have something ready to go in terms of the fact, start up with a voluntary site for maybe like 2 or 3 months, but never work there for longer, because at the end of the day, you need money. Money in this game is so important. So, LinkedIn is very important. I would say, promoting your articles to a new audience, to business people, to people who are very savvy with that business side acumen is important. I would also say, make sure your CV is, with your work, always like have things like a wakelet portfolio, always put up your achievements, promote things on social media. Twitter is a prime example of this, using hashtags. And I would also just say, just to talk to people, if you want to know something from a top journalist, simple, go and look for their email, ask them, what advice would you give to me? What do you think would be wise? And just go from there. So it's all about just talking, building your way up, and then eventually you make it to a place like this.
So I saw that you studied sports journalism. So what was your experience studying sports journalism at university? And would you say that for journalism, university is a necessity?
I think it's difficult to say, because obviously university is a very be all and end all kind of thing. Now it's not more than just academic stuff. It's more of a social life, and now it's more easier. But obviously I wouldn't say it's essential. If you don't want to do university, that's fine, but it's going to be a little bit more difficult. For sports journalism at university, I think it's very football oriented. So if you don't know much about other sports, it's going to be tough. But at the end of the day, it's just all about learning. And I think it just teaches you the importance of getting a professional email, a professional presentation. It also teaches you how to handle different pieces of camera equipment and how to make sure, everything is TikTok. Is up to scratch, I would say. Don't put TikTok. So yeah, it's handy, but obviously, I don't think you should be peer pressured to go into university.
Yeah. Do you have any specific goals for the future, like a specific race you might want to cover?
Specific goals? Survive. Survive. No, I would love to do Le Mans 24 hours because I have always been a bit of a sports car fan. Although this year it's grown with WEC and the hypercars, it's gained a lot more intrigue, and I'm very tempted now. I'm in a position to go and do it. So I would love to do Le Mans one day. I would also love to do the Indianapolis 500. I did IndyCar for 1 year in 2022, and I did enjoy the IndyCar side because it was very different to Formula One. It was much more open, I would say. So you could have a chat with Alex Palou on a Zoom meeting, whilst in Formula One, you need to be here, realistically, in the paddock. So I would love to do Indy, but the problem with Indy is it always clashes with Monte Carlo. So hopefully 1 year when they're not side by side, I could maybe have a go at it. But of course, I think the main important thing is just to try and just keep being here, because you do get lost in the moment and the whole stress of work and the fact there's 4 million drivers to talk to. You don't realize, you're actually here. And, I would just like to be here for a little bit longer, but I'm not one person to say, okay, well, I want to do it. I want to be here in 10 years, 15 years, because I don't like to be bashful, and I don't like to set unrealistic objectives, which may look rather fanciful in a few years' time if it all goes wrong.
Yeah. So what is the most difficult part about being a motorsport journalist?
I think it's very tough, particularly with the fact that we now have 23 races, 24 next year. You don't really get that much time at home. It's a long 4 or 5 days. The hours are all over the place. Sleep schedule, forget it. There's no sleep schedule in this place. You rely on coffee. There's no time to breathe, really. And it is very taxing, isn't? Some days it is a very unenjoyable job, and you sometimes have to look at trying to prioritize, not just you, but focus on yourself, focus on your mental health. And in this day and age, I think that's been more talked about, in the fact that people are being more open about it. And I think once that starts happening in journalism, I would say more people will start to feel less uncomfortable about the more gritty sides of our game.
Definitely. It must be difficult because you can't really go back home as often and things like that.
No, can't. And especially if you're abroad, you can't just go home on a Saturday morning if you don't want to be there. You have to stay there until your flights or until Monday.
Yeah. So my final question for you is, what advice would you give to a young journalist?
If you really want to do this, do it. But obviously you have to be committed, and it doesn't happen overnight. Nothing happens in overnight in life, and journalism is no exception. So I would just say network all the time, get a LinkedIn page, get Wayclick, get CV pumping, get articles, learn what you really like talking about. If you want to talk about F1, talk about F1. If you want to talk about Indy, talk about Indy. If you want to talk about sports cars, rallying, whatever, you pick and choose. So just find what you like and what you don't like. And then I would also just try and start talking to more people who are in the paddock more often, or who have been there, done that, got the t-shirt. But I think the other thing I would say is also just keep your head up. If you have a knockback, dust yourself off. But it won't be forever. You just have to stay. You have to persevere and just not give up. That's the other thing as well. I would say is crucial for a young journalist.
Yeah. So thank you, Ed, for talking to me, and thank you guys for listening to the podcast. That's all for now, and bye.